The tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lips, the tip of the tongue, the teeth, the lip. She sells seashells by the seashore. Hey everybody, it's Torrance with Sword Guy Builds. Ordinarily when I do these overviews, the whip in the video would go up on the in-stock page, but this time I wanted to make something that I would enjoy having for myself. Right now the only rawhide whip that I have for my personal use is a 6-foot falchion, so this time I'll be making a 5-foot Tachi model. I'm also going to be doing something special for the handle, so I'm so excited about this. I hope you like it. To start with, I need to decide the colors. This will have a laminated wooden handle, so I need to pick woods and kangaroo colors that will complement each other. I land on mahogany, purple heart, and padauk. I cut my woods into strips and then take a moment to sand the strips smooth. They're then carefully epoxied together. While the epoxy cures, I begin on the thong. I use 1/4-inch all thread for the handle core and grind some flats into it so it has no chance to spin after the parts are assembled. The Tachi model specifically is solid kangaroo, so I cut my core, bellies, and bolster from this saddle tan hide. Everything is then wet stretched, tapered, and beveled. Tapering belly strands is very nuanced because if they taper too fast, you lose a lot of mass, and if they taper too slow, the whip may feel clunky. It's a constant series of judgment calls based on how you want the whip to handle. I know from experience that the last thing you want in a wood-handled whip is to see a swell anywhere past the wood, so I can't use my usual method of starting the braiding at the end of the steel. Both bellies will be braided over 3 inches of the handle core, which will increase the girth, so I also make sure to skive down the part of the core that will be bound to the steel. I can now begin to assemble my parts. First the core is bound on, and then it gets hung up and meticulously tapered by hand. Everything is then greased and braided to length. Aside from achieving a good foundational taper, it's also important to braid especially tightly for the first few inches of the thong. When the first belly is braided, I can cut out my bolster. This is also then skived down where it'll be bound on, trimmed with scissors to fit the belly, and brought to its final taper. The second belly is then braided to the end of the first, and I taper off the tails of the first belly before finishing out the second. This whip will have a 16 plat overlay. I wanted to use similar colors to the woods in the handle, so I land on saddle tan, red, and purple. These strands also get stretched, tapered, and beveled. I actually made all my strands a little too wide, so I ended up moving all my braiding up a few inches to get rid of the widest parts. When the braiding is finished, I very tightly bind it down and trim off the excess to make room for the handle. Now that I know the finished diameter of the thong, I can take the handle blank to the lathe and turn it down to match. I love working on the lathe, but laminations can be a little tough to turn because of the epoxy, plus Purple Heart is a very hard wood. I'm constantly taking measurements and using multiple chisels to get the length and shape I want, and this handle also gets a small groove cut into it before being sanded smooth. This is one of my favorite accents to do on a wooden handle. This tiny ring knot is tied very carefully into the groove with 2 of the colors from the thong to create visual intrigue and tie the look together. Finally, the handle is epoxied onto the all thread and the final cover-up knot is tied over the seam. I'm so excited to see how this whip breaks in over time. I think the tension, the braiding, and the handle came out super nice. My biggest issue with this whip is actually just that my color coordination was not as good as it normally is. I think natural tan instead of saddle tan and pink instead of purple probably would have matched the wood handle colors a lot more closely. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to drop suggestions in the comments for whips you would like to see made, and I will catch you next time.